Texas agriculture up to 1900. How did farming in the late 1800s change in Texas? Well, there was an impact of railroads on farming. Goods were shipped quicker, cheaper, and railroads made brochures showing the rich farmland. Farming in West Texas. Difficult because of the dry climate. Farmers needed help. Horse-drawn plows that could plow several rows at once, two-row planters, threshers. There are pictures of those, okay, in the order from the bottom left up to the top right. Cotton boom. Cottonseed oil, America's original vegetable oil. Mmm. Cotton became more profitable when they discovered the value of cottonseed oil. By the 1890s, Texas produced more than any other state. Well, too much boom leads to a bust. Too many farmers moved to West Texas. Overproduction occurred. Prices were really good at first. Profits were amazing in West Texas, lots of dollars. But too much production equals what? A drop in prices. A rise in land prices in West Texas. Texas was hit hardest by the bust. By 1900, Texas was a leading producer of lumber, cottonseed oil, meat packing, Great Southwest Strike of 1886. Railroad workers weren't being treated fairly, so the Knights of Labor, a union group, organized a strike. Violence broke out in Fort Worth. Most people got angry because goods were not being produced or shipped on time. There was a strike. Unions became very unpopular in Texas, as noted by the sign. Union labor protecting the art of laziness since the Industrial Revolution. Okay, impact of boom and bust cycles in leading Texas industry. We'll start out with farming. Agriculture was the leading industry in Texas at the beginning of the 20th century. Growing urbanization resulted in increased demand for agricultural products. As the value of these agricultural products increased, farmers began mechanizing to produce more crops. Overproduction, though, led to a drop in prices, which was part of the boom and bust cycle. The Depression era caused many farmers to lose or abandon their farms. Increased demand during the Second World War helped the industry revive. Following the Second World War, agriculture became more commercialized in Texas. Cotton was first grown by Spanish missionaries. The cotton industry in Texas was well established in 1852, with Texas ranked in the top 10 of cotton producing states. Cotton production decreased during the Civil War. The 1870s introduction of barbed wire and railroads stimulate the industry, which experienced steady growth since the Civil War. Increased demand during the First World War resulted in overproduction and decrease in prices. This led many tenant farmers and sharecroppers to abandon farms. The economic depression of the 1930s, coupled with the Dust Bowl, resulted in a decline of production and price declines. The increased demand brought by the Second World War revived the industry. Ranching, following the Civil War, was home to a large supply. Demand for cattle in the North resulted in higher prices and increased cattle production. An economic panic of 1873 affected the industry for a short time, but prices recovered and were high levels again 10 years later. The introduction of barbed wire in the late 1880s transformed the industry from open range to fenced-in pastures and brought about conflicts between small ranchers and large landowners. Panic and drought in 1893 put some ranchers out of business. The First World War facilitated a boom in cattle sales, but in the 1920s, deflation in prices was bankrupting some. During the Great Depression, ranchers suffered a drought, overstock, and low prices plagued the industry. For the first time in history, okay, ranchers moved herds into areas previously used for cotton farming. The cycle of cattle ranching continued through the late 20th century, with beef prices falling in the early 1980s. Drought, shortage of winter supplies, and pastures were to blame. By the time in 1988 it was revived.